Hi, this is on imagination. Call this a journal entry. I just need to talk. When I was working through what I call the wisdom fruit, there were milestones, like a scavenger hunt, but you had to do it in order. And this is vital. This is true to the logic. It has to be done in order. And if it's not done in order, then it gets stuck. So one of the biggest logical fallacies of story building is people wanting to build Z when they haven't done A through Z. That's huge. You have to build in the right order. Knowing where you are in the story is vital to knowing what you have to work on next. And there's a mathematical pattern that does all of this for you that tells you. So if you have the formula, you can just go through the checklist. That's what I have. That's how I do all the stuff I do is I have a checklist and I know the order of operations. That is exactly what the order of operations is. So I did a whole lot of study on order of operations. I looked into PEMDAS. You remember that from school. Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. It's why you have to do parentheses, multiplication, addition, subtraction. I have to write it out and then read it off. I can't think about it in my head. That being said, it's called the order of operations. So then I asked the question, okay, yeah, but why do we have PEMDAS? Why is there an order of operations? So really what this is, and this is something that bothered me, PEMDAS is an example of an order of operation. It's not the definition of order of operation. It is an example of. So one of the first trials I had to figure out is what was PEMDAS and why does the order of operations matter? So when I researched PEMDAS, I found out that it's called an order of operations. Now that is the name for it. They actually have never named this. It's called the order of operations, which I think is a really shitty name. So we'll call it ooh. So I'm looking at ooh and I'm asking, okay, so why do we have the order of operations? The order of operations is, hmm, I actually just got the name for this 2 days ago and did this whole thing over here. So I have a component all ready to go to plug in, and I'm like, oh my God, it's that component. So that's what's going on in my brain now. It's called a hierarchy. It's called hierarchy. Now, this is where it got really interesting. I looked at the word hierarchy, and that's actually not how it's pronounced. It's pronounced hierarchy or hierarchy. That's actually how it's pronounced. So I went into, it's actually like hierarchy. It's Hera, as in the goddess Hera, Hera's archy. That's actually where the word came from, is Hera's archy. So I was looking at where the hierarchy was, what it came from, and all that jazz. Now there's the patriarchy over here. Did you notice that? Patriarchy versus hierarchy. Do you see the contrast? So what people think is the patriarchy, and this is where people are throwing out hierarchy, not realizing that it's in contrast to the patriarchy. So this is where things are a little fuddled in people's head, and this is why we have this conversation. So order of operations is actually Hera's archy. So here's the fun part. The word archy means origin. That's all. It just means Hera's origin. Isn't that amazing? Which ties into what order of operations is about. I'm going to show you that here in a minute. Okay, so you have Hera's origin. Now, patriarchy means I'm in charge and let's play King of the Hill and I have the advantage. And that is a dirty tit for tat strategy game that criminals use. So, patriarchy is actually built off of criminal forensics and it's based off of, or criminal psychology, and it's based off of the advantage holder. Okay, now, and it supplants the advantage, it supplants the origin with the advantage. So now you have these contrasts. Now, in the criminal's advantage world, the hierarchy threatens it. So now it doesn't work. So they threw away Hera's archy, the Hera's origin, so they could supplant the criminal advantage in place of it. So the order of operations is the logic, which is the order, of dependent and independent from the origin. I'm going to say that one again. It is the order of dependent and independent in relativity to the origin. So you have the origin, Hera, and then it goes from there of Hera birthed this person who birthed this person. And every one of these, this is literally what genealogy is based off of. Genealogy is Hera-Archy. Now, Hera is actually one of the ancient Greek names for Gaia, Mother Goddess, Mother Nature. That goes all the way back. And it has nothing whatsoever to do with gender, as you find out when you get into the Anunnaki. So when you get all the way back to the beginning, you are at the origin. And we're all in agreement that this is God. The problem that we're having is, who is this guy? And is it a man, or is it a girl or a boy? Like, this is the problem right here. Now, what people don't pay attention to is the 3 that comes after the 1. And this is the problem. The 3 that comes after the 1 are most important. And we are all in agreement that it is air, water, and earth. That is 100% in every single story, myth, religion around the entire world, that there are 3, and they are air, earth, and water. There. When you integrate these 3 gods, they integrate into one uber awesome god. What is the name of that one really nerdy thing? It was like Votron. It's Votron. So God is Votron, guys, okay? And once you understand that God is Votron, it changes everything. I got to make sure that I'm right here on the God is Votron. I just got to look up Votron. This is because I don't know my pulp culture from the 80s as well as I would like. Votron. Let me just, yes, I was right. It's Voltron. Voltron. All right, yeah, I was right. So it's this guy, guys. It's this guy. Okay, so that's God. Okay. So if you think about God like Voltron, this is going to make a lot more sense to you. Okay. That's what we mean by 3 and 1. Okay. Which is why I said gender doesn't matter, is because God was changeling. God really, and this is something that we see over and over again, which complies with 100% of all stories across all religions and mythologies, that God is a changeling because God can do whatever the fuck God wants, which is change into whatever the fuck God wants. So one of the things that God loved to do was change his gender into a her gender, from a his gender all the damn time. Like, that was the thing that they did. And that, again, is in every culture, every mythology, every story does that, which is why there's a lot of people going, oh, no, the moon god was a boy. No, the moon god was a girl. No, that's because they're fucking with you, because that's God's sense of humor. So God is Voltron, and there are air, earth, and water. Now, I like to hypothesize, and this is an hypothesis at this point, that Voltron is fire. But I don't know. This is the part of the story that doesn't make sense to me. And that's what all the stuff is lining up to, except chemistry, which is where I'm going. But chemistry doesn't agree with that. So what's going on? And that's really where I'm stuck, because that doesn't make sense, which tells me it's wrong. So we're not there yet. I'm pretty sure there are components that I need before I can get to that point. Like I said, order of operations. So when we're talking about the order of operations, what we're really talking about is who's in charge. And people are thinking in terms of biological age. And that's not at all the case. Now, what we're looking at is, when you look at literally genetics is 100% the best example for this. Genetics is the origin archy. You can look at DNA and go, look, the parent cell. So we're talking about the origin cell here. That is really what we're talking about. This is not fucking hard, people. This is what educational systems run off of, is who's the dependent and who's the independent. Now, if you know about this and you know how to measure on this, oh, you're fine. And this is what the Olympic torch was all about. Who's the smartest and who gets to hold the torch? That's what the torch represented. That's why they had Athena's wisdom, or laurel cotinos. The cotinos were the laurel wreath that was sat on the head of the olive branch. The olive branch was Athena's tree. So they were taking Athena's wisdom and placing it as a crown around the temple because that's where the brain is. And that's where the concept of the cotinos and the laurel wreath came from. Is it was awarded to the winner of the Olympics because they were the best human because they passed the three tests of wisdom, body, and soul. As a result, they were handed the cotinos, and that meant, okay, they can lead because they're the smartest. Look, they're the torchbearer. And the torchbearer is what lights the lighthouse beacon to say, hey, we're the smart people over here, which was what the lighthouse of Pharos was all about. It was telling people, yeah, we're the smart ones. And they were because they had the games and they used the games to determine who was the smartest because they needed to know who the origin was so they could continue passing down the knowledge from generation to generation. So this is called the Hera-Archy, the Hera-Archy. Now, these dumb asses come along called the Romans, and they wanted the patriarchy. Now, the word patriarchy did not come along until the 15th century when some asshole by the name of John Filmer invented that shit for King James. That's a whole nother story. But they did have this mindset and the sculpture and the whole concept of patriarchy, and that's what they practiced. It was based off of the psychological tit for tat strategy that allowed them to hoard the advantage. The advantage is the only thing they think about and care about. Now, all criminals, all unethical people, all abusers, all narcissists, all bullies run off of let's get, keep, hold, hoard the advantage. Now, to measure advantage, they came up with a system, not really, it's in our psychology, called tit for tat strategy, which is an incorrect name because strategy meant that some mathematician sat down and strategized this with logic, which did not happen at all. It's actually tit for tat method, and it's part of human primitive psychology called carnal psychology. Okay, really primitive. So, tit for tat method is the psychological analysis to determine who's the smart monkey and who should we follow. Now, later on, abusers monopolized on that concept and ran with it, and those are the advantage holders. Now, these assholes decided to change the word advantage to something different called power and control, and that's not the case at all. It's called the advantage. The advantage makes the illusion of power control when in fact they have none. It's the advantage. Now, you can take the advantage away from them, but you can't take power and control because that's a delusion. And they know this. So they strategized by purposely calling it power and control so you can't have it. Oh, but you can because it's advantage. But if you know that, then you can take it from them. So, to take someone's advantage, what you really want to do is figure out what they're trying to hold over you and get it from somewhere else. It's called Hera-Archy. So when you realize that you don't need them with their advantage because you can get it from somewhere else, then you're in a really great standing and you realize, okay, they don't have any power over you. No one ever did. They just had advantage over you, advantage holders. So when you start negotiating with anyone who functions on the advantage holding, what you're really doing is complying to their system. You don't want to do that. When you comply to their system, they can do whatever the fuck they want and make you think that you have no choice when in fact you have a lot of choice, but they don't want you to know that. So this is where hierarchy and patriarchy come from and why we have the order of operations. So now I'm looking at story with the order of operations, and basically you have to make sure that you have everything in order in the right sequence so that you can build up. And that is literally what gives you independence. That is exactly why we have the order of operations. It's the formula for independence. You can see why the patriarchy is really threatened by the hierarchy. Just saying. Thank you so much, and may the kindest of words always find you.